G'day YouTube. Just a quick video of, actually it's not a quick video, it's probably going to be quite a long video. This is an investment property I have. This is the bathroom floor. Now all of these properties when they were built, they were done very cheap, as with most new builds. They're always done really cheap, and they cut corners because they can get away with it because they've got a 10-year warranty. They really don't care, they just want to get paid and get out of there, so they're just cheap units. And this is what's happened to my upstairs shower. So basically the waterproofing's broken down and they all have this problem, this complex. They all basically go at some point, and it costs several $1,000s to fix this. It was quotes to $3,500 to $4,500 to fix this problem. In all fairness, it has lasted, over 10 years. So I mean, if it had been done properly, you might get 15, 20 years out of it, but it has really served its purpose. Even though they cut out two major things when they did this, when they put this drain in and the shower in, it's still held up really well. Now this is the first step, is you've got to get the floor up. Now the best way to do this is you pull off the bottom row of tiles. You'll have to degrout those first, as to not split any of the other tiles or crack them. Then you have to pull the tiles off the floor up, and you have to pull the concrete up, and there's some wire mesh underneath, and then finally you have to pull the tongue and groove up. So basically that's a whole lot of swearing and yelling and getting really cranky because it's hard work and it takes ages, and but you're saving yourself a lot of money if you can sort of do this sort of stuff, which I can. The other problem you can have here, which I didn't have, was the floor joists. If this has been happening for a long time, you actually have to look at replacing floor joists or bodging something up. You can actually do it on the cheap and laminate new joists and stuff like that, but it's not really ideal. I didn't have to do that here because my joists are in good condition, but it's just something to be aware of. So after the floor's pulled up, basically what's got to happen is we've got to put a new piece of tongue and groove down. So I've cut that as far as I can using the tools I had. I left my recip saw at home. If I had that, I probably could have got it all the way back to the wall. But that part of the old tongue and groove was still good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to support that with some timbers underneath, just to make sure. I mean, it doesn't need it because it's sitting on joists. But just to make sure, it says where the tongue and groove doesn't meet, you should support it. That's Australian standard, so that's what you should do. I'll show you that later. But anyway, so on top of the tongue and groove, which is just the yellow tongue, and then we put fibrous cement sheeting. So that goes down next, and then you start to look at installing your drains and puddle flanges and stuff like that. So we'll do that in a minute. Also get all the glue from the old tiles, get that off, and sand those walls, that lower tile. So here's what's called a puddle flange. So basically that sits in the fibrous cement sheeting. So what I did is I flipped it upside down, traced around it with a pencil, and then I used a special tool on my multi-cutter to sort of router that out. It was actually the degrouting blade that Bosch sell, which worked quite well for this. I was able to just sort of grind it down with that. And then the puddle flange actually sits in there flush, and you screw it down. So what you'll do is you'll put heaps of Sikaflex under that, and then you'll screw that puddle flange down with 4 screws, and the Sikaflex will put a seal underneath it, and then the waterproofing will go down on top of that puddle flange to that smaller circle you'll see, and then there's a thread there that goes up to the actual drain. I'll explain what this puddle flange does. So basically you've got this fibrous cement sheeting which then gets waterproof. Then you've got a concrete base, and then basically then you've got your tiles on top of that, and you grout, and 90% of the water will just go straight down the drain, but the rest will actually seep through the grout and sit on the bottom on top of the waterproofing. So what this puddle flange does is allows you to get rid of that 10% of water that's sitting on the bottom. So it will drain away. It's sort of like a second drain, but it's part of the same drain. So your drain actually sits in it, and there's a thread, and the water sort of either goes straight down the middle from the top, or it goes around the sides and down the thread under the water, on top of the waterproofing. So it's sort of like a safety, I suppose, to stop the floor breaking down. Now, when this unit was built, it didn't even have one of these. It was just a straight pipe, and there was no puddle flange at all. Now, this is the plumbing under the floor, so this is pretty simple stuff. You can go down to Bunnings and buy these pipes. They're standard sort of sizes, and you just sort of coat both surfaces with plumber's glue and get them together, and try not to move them too much once you've glued them. Let them set, and then obviously at some point you've got to test that it's not going to leak before you sheet the ceiling, which I do last. But you can see here the fibrous cement sheeting back again. This is upstairs again. So I've screwed that sheet down. It's got liquid nails under it, the same as the tongue and groove. It's also liquid nails. I've used stud adhesive and screwed it down. And then I've used Sikaflex on top of the screw holes, which are countersunk as well. And then the waterproofing will go on top of this. You can also see the puddle flange has Sikaflex around it, and all the screws that are screwing that down, they've got Sikaflex around them as well. So that'll all get waterproofed, and the corners will get waterproofed. So the corners will get waterproofed as well. It uses a special tape to do those corners, and then silicone up the sides. And he'll just waterproof up to where the old waterproofing was. And that will seal the shower, because I know the leak was coming from the drain, so that's going to be good enough. So this is what I had to do to support the floor where the tongue and groove didn't quite line up perfectly. They recommend you do this on their website. Now the reason that I couldn't get it lined up properly is because it's a renovation. I'm not gutting the whole bathroom. If I was gutting the bathroom, it'd be very easy to get it to line up. Because I can't manoeuvre it exactly to where I need it to get to, I couldn't line it up easily. Also, having one person makes it difficult. Two people would be better. I did this on my own. You can see that top bit of timber there. Now that's the floor joist. Now because I couldn't sit one end of the tongue and groove, actually both ends, directly on the floor joist without ripping off the walls, not easily anyway with the tools I had with me, I basically laminated a 70 by 35 on the side of that joist and glued it. And then I've screwed that in, and I've staggered the screws. You can see one low, one high, one low, and I've done that right along. And that basically is how the floor is supported at that end. It's the same at the other end. And the pieces, I suppose you'd call them nogs, or you could probably call them trimming, going sideways across there in between the joists. That's what's holding the bit where it doesn't line up quite perfectly. And because I screwed that into that bit of timber, which is then screwed to the joist, that I wasn't happy with that, so I put two more laminated bits of 70-35 underneath, screwed directly to the joist. So then that timber is then double supported. And then the next bit, like further over here, I've got that nog just screwed to the side of the joist. The reason I've done that is because if I'd have just kept putting screws in a straight line on the joist there, I would have created a weak spot. So basically what I've done is I've put the screws, I've taken them a lot further out, so the screws are going into a totally different area of the joist. Now I did this on the other side as well, because there was 6 of these I had to do. I mean, I didn't have to do 6, there's probably only 3 I had to do, but I figured I might as well just do them all just to be happy. And there's a little packer there you can see. A bit of the floor wasn't quite flush, so I just put the 2 nogs up there and I used a packer. Then I laminated or screwed them together. So this is the floor with all the Sikaflex done around the drain and everything. You can see there that puddle flange with the little cylinder in the middle, that actually can screw up to the level of the floor. So that there's concrete going on top of this and some wire mesh, and then the tiles. Now I'm not doing the waterproofing or the tiling, so basically I'm just getting this to a point that the waterproofer can come in and waterproof it. Next time round I'll do the waterproofing, I just didn't want to do it this time round. This is the ceiling below, that's the piece I cut out. Now because it's coming up to Christmas, there's the tenant, I left it at this point. I just screwed a piece up temporarily and left it for Christmas, and I just went back today actually and put the sheet in and set it and sanded it and painted it. But I didn't want to cut out any more than that. Why those pieces of timber there is that the gyprock was hanging down a little bit. I've just stuffed some stud adhesive in there and used the timbers to, like a acro, I suppose, without the acro. And I basically left those timbers there for a few hours until that glue dried, and then I very carefully removed the screws and took those blocks out. Then I put some more timbers up there so I had something to screw the gyprock sheet to. I always like to keep these sheets down as small as I can because I'm often doing this on my own. So you can see here the waterproofing, what's been done. He's put some tape in all the corners there, and then he's waterproofed that once. He's going to come back and do it again. You can see my little screws where the Sikaflex, it's just drying at different speeds. So that's why you can see that. And that'll get done again. He'll waterproof that twice. And at this point I'm flood testing it. So I'm coming back a couple of days later and I'm flood testing it to make sure there's no leaks. At this point, all I'm really concerned about is that the shower base doesn't leak, because if the drain leaks, it's an easy fix. If the drain was to leak, since I'm leaving just a piece of gyprock on the ceiling for Christmas, I'm not doing anything else with it. If the drain was to leak, I could very easily come back and just replace the pipe. It wouldn't take me very long, and then resheet the ceiling downstairs. But I'm leaving that ceiling sheeting till very last, till the tiling's done and everything, and then I'll flood test it again, and then I'll set and sand the ceiling and paint it downstairs. So here's finally I've come back after Christmas, and I've set that piece of gyprock in there. I actually moved the light because the join was right where the light had to go, and I didn't really want to put the light there, so I just moved it a little bit. It's not quite in the middle of the doorway, but it doesn't really matter. And here I've just painted the ceiling, so you can see there, the paint's wet, so that's why you can see a few things, but otherwise that's a ceiling flat paint. Any little tiny imperfections that will sort of hide as well. A lot of guys use low sheen on ceilings, and plasterers sort of tearing their hair out wondering why people can see what they've done. It's because the painter's using low sheen. If you use ceiling flat, a lot of problems go away. It's a bit more forgiving. So anyway, that's just sort of what I had to do over Christmas. Fun.